Okay, well, hello everybody, and a very warm welcome to this session today on taking advantage of the new Freeports in the UK. I was watching the number count of attendees just creep over the 100 there, so I thought now was a good time to start. By way of introduction, my name's Nick Farmer. I'm an international tax partner at Menzies, and I'm joined by Kevin Shakespeare, Director at the Institute of Export, very experienced international trade trainer, has worked on many trade initiatives and with investment organizations, and also with my colleague Sean Turner, Senior Manager at Menzies, specialist in international trade, supply chain planning, and has a particular focus on VAT and customs matters. So why are we talking about Freeports today? I mean, around the world, there's probably estimated to be around 3,500 Freeports. I think it's mentioned that there's around 80 Freeports across the EU, and the UK itself has actually had Freeports in the past. I think there were 7 Freeports between 1984 and 2012. Well, the exciting thing is that back in March last year, the Chancellor confirmed 8 Freeport locations which will come on stream around the UK. And this is hugely exciting for the UK. I mean, these are ambitious initiatives looking to regenerate those local areas, create employment. They're going to be global trade and investment hubs, and potentially a hotbed for sort of innovation and specific sectors that they will be focusing on. So quite a big change here for the UK, and now felt like a good time to actually be talking about Freeports, as we've seen a couple of them just come on stream at the end of last year. So we've had Teesside that opened for business in November last year, and we have Thames, which opened for business in December last year. So a good time really just to be sort of taking stock of where we are with Freeports at the moment. And worth mentioning, I think, in advance, and not everything is known. So there may be some questions that come in, please do put them on the chat, that at the moment there just aren't answers to, but we'll do our best to sort of at least explain why that may be the case. Just if you're wondering what a Freeport actually is, well, it's a special economic area which has been designated in the UK. It's around a port that may be an air, rail, or a seaport. The UK Freeports are sort of an area which is sort of around 45 kilometres beyond the port it can extend to. And these zones within them will have particular designated sites, which will give customs advantages, tax advantages, and maybe sort of seed capital benefits. So definitely people are asking the question, is this for me? And actually, what would I need to do to actually establish myself in the Freeport and take advantage of some of these benefits? And that's exactly what we'll be looking to unpack in the next hour or so. So the format of the session is that I will hand controls over to Kevin in a minute, and he will really run us through the background of Freeports, what they are, where they are in the UK, where these 8 Freeports are, and some of the benefits of them. Sean will then delve a bit deeper into the customs and the VAT benefits of actually operating through that Freeport. I'll pick up on some of the direct tax benefits that are available in the tax sites within the Freeports. And then at the end, we'll have a bit of a Q&A and hopefully pick up on any questions which have been posted through the chat. So without further ado, Kevin, hopefully I can hand over to you. You can take controls and take it away.
Thank you very much, Nick, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well. So we will be looking during the next few slides around Freeports. So we're going to be looking at the benefits of Freeports, and Nick gave a great introduction in the context of the areas that I'm going to be covering. So I think one of the first things you want to say is that, we can compare Freeports in the past, and we can all look in the past, but the modern Freeports are very much different from the past. So, and at global level, there are more rules and regulations around Freeports or free trade zones, special economic zones, that are effectively, a lot of it is in Annex D of the WCO, the World Customs Organization, revised Kyoto Convention. But it is sometimes the interpretation of that, but ultimately Freeports have to operate within certain regulations. So there is the World Free Zones Safe Zone Programme, and there is the OECD Code of Conduct for Free Zones. And both of those are really trying to make sure that Freeports operate with full transparency. So very much to counter this concept that can be around that Freeports are involved with illicit trade. So these regulations are very much in place to try and make sure that it is free trade, and that's really, really important. And I guess as trade becomes more digital, with the emphasis on trade compliance, that's very evident. If you're an operator within the ecosystem of trade, it's very important that you are compliant, and the same goes for Freeports as well. So, so if we think about the UK Freeports as referred to, there's a map with the UK Freeports. We can obviously see around ports and airports, but also it's not just about the Freeports itself. It's also the tax, the customs sites within Freeports. It's also the connectivity as well. So intermodal with the likes of rail could be quite important, and the actual connectivity between Freeports, this concept, if you like, of a trade corridor. So there's lots of opportunities there, and also we need to think about the dynamics of trade between these Freeports. So where they're facing off, whether it's the south of England, the north of England, the northeast, the northwest, there's dynamics and opportunities in the context of trade lanes and trade corridors as well, which I'll refer to. So that's a map detailing the Freeports from Solent, Thames, Freeport East, Felixstowe, Harwich, Humber, Teesside, Liverpool, East Midlands, and Plymouth. So if we now move on and we consider the next slide, building on trade corridors. So when I talked around this, is that the UK is negotiating more free trade agreements, economic partnership agreements, and has its trade continuity agreements as well. So the opportunity is for Freeports to build on this concept of this trade corridor and simplify trade. And it also links to the UK Border Innovation Hub and the ecosystem of trust pilots that are where submissions need to be made by the end of this month. And the concept is to facilitate trade. So to use things like the import declaration is effectively cleared by the export declaration, and reuse of data. So you're not having to put data in lots of times. And this sharing of mutual recognition schemes and trades sustainability. So I'll talk later clearly, and happy to ask questions about the types of sectors and products in Freeports. Renewable energy, clean energy would very much be towards the top of that list. But Freeports have that opportunity to develop this concept of trade corridor within UK free trade agreements. So if we move, I'll move on to the next. So the outcomes there would be reduction in cost of importing and exporting, faster turnaround times, improved trade and customs compliance. So if actors are all submitting information throughout the supply chain, there's greater visibility. So, oh, did I go forward there? Do we have a poll question now? So the poll question, and others will be far better than me at this, is how important is it to your business to be able to submit all your declarations, licenses and certifications for a single portal? And this is linked through the UK's development of a single trade window. So would you say it would make it a lot easier? It will make a significant difference to your business by reducing admin costs and efficiency by being able to submit your export licenses, your export health certificates, phytosanitary certificates through and customs declaration through one portal. Is that essential to your business? It will make a big difference. Is it quite important? It will provide some reduction, not very important, or not sure. So very, very interested in your feedback, and thank you for completing the poll question. So thank you very much indeed, everyone, for completing that. That's really helpful. So 38 and 36%, quite essential and quite important. So we're hoping, I guess, in the UK that this concept of a single trade window, where it's so much easier to submit through one portal, will make a significant difference, and it links this concept of trade corridors as well. So thank you very much indeed for completing the poll question. So if I now try and move forward to the next slide. So now I just want to concentrate, and I've only got a few more slides here, on customs benefits in the Freeport. So some of there is that Freeport is not necessarily considered within customs territory. So the customs entry can be processed when goods are removed from the Freeport. Clearly, there's this element of customs bonds, or so within a Freeport, if you're using specific procedures I'll talk about in a minute, such as inward processing, customs warehousing, there isn't that requirement for a financial guarantee to support the customs bond, which can make quite a big difference to your banking facilities. It's also important to note that both foreign and domestic goods may be placed in the Freeport. So that is important in the local supply chain is also very, very important to a Freeport. It's not just all goods coming from overseas. So that element of a local and international supply chains is very, very important to support the wider economy. So, duty payments only paid when goods enter the local economy. So if you're importing goods or you're producing materials, semi-component parts into full goods, you only pay that duty when they enter the local economy. But if you re-export those goods, the import duty and the import VAT is not payable. So it's very, very important to note the benefits there with the use of inward processing for the processing of goods and customs warehousing for likes of distribution. So very, very important. And also what's important is that goods can move unrestricted within the Freeport. So if we consider Freeports in other parts of the world, there's this concept there of goods can actually move unrestricted in the Freeport. So you can have supply chains develop within the Freeport itself. Okay, so if we move on in the slides, I'll just, I think this is the final slide for myself. The Institute of Export and International Trade are very keen to contribute to Freeport, so very keen to provide customs and trade help desks as we do currently for the whole trade community in the UK and internationally to support Freeports and the local economy. There's also the skills and the education agenda as well is important, apprenticeships, qualifications, the operate. The Institute are involved in several trade corridor activities at the moment in this ecosystem of trust. Also news feeds, so clearly topical areas such as rules of origin, supplier declarations at the moment are important, as well as company health checks. So that's it from me, I think, and I'll hand back now, but thank you for listening to me, and I look forward to answering some questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. And just to keep you on your toes, there's a few questions that have come in that will probably be quite relevant to pick up on now if we can. One really is around the two Freeports that have already come on stream. So as we said, Teesside and Thames. What are they particularly focusing? Because I know each Freeport has particular kind of in areas of business that they're looking to promote and that are relevant to their region. What can you tell us about those two Freeports?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. What I'll do is clearly preface some questions by saying the best people to answer them would be the actual Freeports themselves and the Freeport operators. So they'll be clearly heavily involved in that, and there'll be some aspects that are under consideration and discussion. I think it's relevant to the two Freeports, but a lot of Freeports is thinking about the types of sectors and the economy of Freeport. So we have to, I guess, think about the locality of the Freeport in terms of trade lanes. So that comes into place. And we have to think obviously of the port operators, the shipping lines, and others that use the Freeport. Clean energy, clearly renewable energy is going to be key to a number of Freeports, and that's going to be important. For other Freeports, other considerations will also be the intermodal operability. So rail freight being an example. And for others, it will be the link between deep sea and short sea. So if the Freeports have within the Freeports have deep sea operations and short sea, and that will apply for a number of the actual Freeports. So it's probably important to think about that in the context of all Freeports, the actual locality of the Freeport itself, and the connectivity it has to the local economy in terms of intermodal travel. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think from what I can see or pick up anyway, Teesside has got a particular sort of focus on green energy and wind power, being where it's sort of based, and Thames with London Gateway and Tilbury is going to have a strong focus on automotive. Given where we're based in the country, Solent is obviously of quite a significant interest to many of our clients. Where are they in the process at the moment? I know some of this is sensitive, what's happening between the Freeport operator and government, but is there anything you can sort of specifically mention around Solent itself? Because clearly that's of interest.
Yeah, no, again, it's a really, really good question. So I think if we look at Solent, obviously we've got to consider the transport links with Solent, the deep sea Southampton, the short sea Portsmouth, for example, and also the other connectivity of Solent. So that is going to be important. We also have to look at the trade lanes, the trade routes involved as well. So I guess in terms of sectors, in terms of Solent, there is obviously discussions taking place between the Solent Freeport and government, and Solent Freeport will be making more announcements in that regard. What I would say for Solent or any other Freeport again is that with things like clean energy and other sectors, we can talk about R&D, innovation. That please contact the Freeport operators themselves to actually find out more information, and if your business, whether it's in the UK or international, there is that investment angle which can be very important for to the Freeport. Thank you.
Yeah, and there was a question that came in actually around Plymouth's Freeport and the sort of boundary of that. And, I think key to the answer to that question is within a Freeport itself and a designated area, there are then specific zones that are the tax zones or the customs zones, and it's not the entire site in which you get the tax and the customs benefits. So there's maps out there actually for all Freeports in terms of where their boundary is likely to be drawn. And as we said, some Freeports are slightly further on than others here, but you do actually have to look at the individual Freeport and what it's proposing and where those tax sites and custom sites are to understand how they may be relevant to you. And just one more question, Kevin, which sometimes does get mentioned in the press anyway, is how will Freeports counter the risks and concerns of money laundering and tax evasion. You know, this is a big change to the UK to have these free ports. That's one of the sort of things that always gets thrown into the mix. I understand that these are going to be very tightly run areas. There's a lot of rules and regulations and reporting around it, but perhaps a few comments on that would be useful.
Yeah, again, it's a really good question, and I appreciate there is, sometimes when we refer to free trade zones in other parts of the world, that sort of concept can arise. I think it's important to recognise a lot of modern free ports and a lot of transparency is there with the likes of the OECD Code of Conduct, the Safe Zone program. So if businesses if free ports are signing up to that, it becomes key. It's also fair to say that there's a lot more transparency in supply chains now. So I guess an example would with customs authorities, there's a lot more data sharing that takes place now. So and there is track and trace traceability technology in supply chains. So there's a lot more visibility in supply chains going for both now and both going forward. So whilst that in theory can't necessarily completely stop illicit trade, it's going to increase that transparency and how the free ports operate themselves using things like code of conduct will hopefully mean that what we're looking at in a free port is genuine economic activity by genuine businesses and supporting supply chains and value chains, both in the UK internationally, but also inland in the UK as well. So I think we can look positively at that very much should be the way, but the regulation, the transparency, the data sharing is a lot more that now gives that visibility to supply chain, which might not necessarily have existed in the past.
Yeah, so thanks for those comments. And I think now is a good time to bring Sean into the conversation, specifically around the customs and VAT rules that are going to apply to the free port. So Sean, please provide let us know a little bit more about that.
Okay, thanks Nick and Kevin. I'm not seeming to be able to shift the slides at the minute, but Sam can work that out for us. But yeah, this will be a quick run through the customs site specific points. There's a lot out there in published guidance with HMRC, and also there's lots in the public domain on the individual Freeport websites themselves. However, this is still in early stages. There's still much to be decided, and there's lots of unknowns here. So this is more of a rundown of what is out there and what we know at the moment. And how it looks. I think the message also will be, if you're interested in the first instance, just contact the Freeport themselves. I mean, Kevin's already said this, and provide details of your business and what your business does. They should be able to give you some more information at that stage. So firstly, just to have a quick look at what the Freeport policy said originally. As a quick reminder, so the original Freeport policy was aimed at creating this flexible new customs model to improve on the existing customs arrangements. Imports of goods into a Freeport would be tariff-free before processing, followed by local sale or tariff-free export. That was the idea when the Freeport policy was first announced way back when. Specific to customs sites, so we know there was going to be customs sites, and we know there are going to be tax sites alongside them as well. Here we go to the slide. So the customs sites themselves, so what is it? It's a Freeport customs site or a free zone are secure customs sites where a business can import or export goods inside the UK's land border, but where different import or export rules would apply. A Freeport must have a primary customs site, but it can bid for subzones alongside that primary customs site. Essentially, businesses operating a Freeport customs site can benefit from deferred payment of taxes until products are moved elsewhere, or can avoid tariffs altogether. If the goods are imported for storage or value-added manufacture on site before re-export, the full tariff on the original imported goods would usually not be paid. So what are the benefits here? And Kevin's already mentioned some of these in his earlier slides there, but just to dip a little deeper into some of them. What are the key procedural benefits of a customs site? Duty deferral you have there. So usually duty will be paid on entry to the domestic UK market, but not so on entry to the Freeport. Duty inversion, quite a specific one, is where the import duty on finished goods will be lower to the individual raw material component parts on import, but you get the lower rate of duty when the goods are onward shifted to the domestic market. So you're kind of turning the duty rates on their heads there. There'll be various exemptions. You can perhaps import, manufacture and re-export with no duties at any stage of the process. Import VAT suspension, I mean, we're familiar perhaps with this now anyway, following Brexit and the introduction of postponed import VAT accounting. But import VAT suspension is another thing to benefit from. You have, and there'll be more on this in a minute, the customs simplified procedures themselves, which is a general lighter procedure of the administration of customs procedures, rather than it would be for full entry into the UK. And again, as Kevin mentioned, no requirement for financial guarantees necessarily, such as a customs bond, where you might have to put up a bank guarantee against some of the customs procedures you may already have. That should not be the case for operating on a customs site in the Freeport. So that's the basic information we have that's out there at HMRC guidance. But what would you do next? How do you apply it? So at the moment, the guidance on application is kind of out there, but there's not so much as to what will happen once the application has gone in. So when considering to apply for a Freeport status, the most important thing to do though is you need to have a provisional agreement in place with the Freeport operator themselves. So you must make contact with the Freeport before deciding to go down this route. A business operating in the Freeport can apply to use the Freeport Customs Special Procedure, which is a single authorization combined with easier declaration requirements to import goods that are not controlled for processing and export sale, storage and export sale, or sale into the UK. The Freeport single authorization covers a range of procedures, where in the absence of this, authorizations will be required for each individual customs procedure, such as inward processing, as already mentioned, customs warehousing, or perhaps temporary admission. So if an existing customs procedure is to be used, the usual conditions of this authorization will apply, which may not benefit from the single authorization's easier requirements. So you've got to bear in mind what you do have already or may have already versus the overarching single authorization of the Freeport. However, also bear in mind that the business must always comply with the general Freeport conditions and procedures for record keeping and site security. That said, with all the things we just mentioned there, the main issue in applying for this is that the business must be able to demonstrate that it can meet the strict safety and security requirements as well. And this is very important where it comes to the Freeport Customs site. A Freeport Customs site operator must have or intend to have at least one business using its Freeport Customs site to move goods into or out of the site, and that can also be the Freeport operator itself. So, as I said earlier, the application process is now open. Applications can be made to HMRC online to register an interest, and note that is just register an interest. The application for this is a very short application at the moment, just one side of A4 to register the interest, and that's in respect of being the Freeport site operator. What happens next with HMRC is a little unclear and a little undefined at the moment, but I'm sure that'll come in time. As already mentioned, any business using the Freeport Customs site will need to be approved to process or store goods under either the Freeport Special Procedure or an existing Customs Special Procedure the business might have. In the same way as for the site operator application, applications are now open to be made online for the Freeport Customs Special Procedure, although a check on whether the customs procedure is required or whether any existing procedure can be used instead should be made. Finally, as I've also said, bear in mind, provisional agreement with the Freeport operator must be in place first. So you must make contact with the Freeport before you go down this road. Okay, I think that kind of wraps that bit up on the customs sites for now.
Right, not to let you off the hook too quickly, Sean, just a couple of questions that have come in on the chat, which I think may be sort of worth picking up on at this point, if you may. One here: in what ways do Freeport rules on duty differ from inward processing rules? Is that one for you?
It would be, although obviously Kevin's there as well in the background. If he can chip in with anything, he might know. But I would suggest that if you've got a inward processing authorization already, that can be used. Whether you go down the custom special procedure route for the Freeport, that's an overarching special procedure that would be in place. I'd imagine the IPR rules would be pretty much mirrored in that. You just might get an easier administrative way of dealing with it. Kevin, I don't know if there's anything you can add to that.
No, thanks, Sean, and you've come up with some great points. I guess in a classical Freeport versus home economy circumstance, the big difference is around the customs bond and the financial guarantee requirement. Having said that, under the UK's border elements is that you don't necessarily require a financial guarantee now for customs special procedures like customs warehousing, inward processing, unless you're a high risk trader and or have a record of non-compliance. So so some of the benefits around the customs bond are not as transparent, but probably what's important to notice, I guess, is that other elements around Freeports is that goods can move around Freeports without the payment of duty. So if you have a sort of supply chain, I know we've referred to London, for example, in terms of automotive. If you have that supply chain operating in the actual Freeport itself, then you have that benefit of goods moving around in the Freeport as part of a supply chain. So it's probably inward processing, customs warehousing are both very important, but it's also looking at it around the location of the business and nature, the location of business versus the Freeport, and the big benefits that the Freeports can operate, but very much focus on new industry innovation as well. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Kevin. And one more for you, Sean. I think it says, is it correct then to say that on a Freeport arrival, there is no need of customs declaration till the goods are removed from the Freeport?
Well, I think the customs declaration on the way in and the way out will perhaps mirror each other, as what Kevin said earlier about the new innovation in terms of declarations and how it works electronically and digitally. That may be the case, yeah, that just on export, once everything's done and dusted, out it goes. Although there must be some form of declaration on the way in as part of the special procedure that you'd have to apply for when going, or already be approved for when you go into the Freeport itself.
Yeah, and just a quick one here. Where do I find out more about connecting to the UK customs for Freeport automatic filings?
Good question. I'm not sure I can answer that one. Kevin, I don't know if you know anything on that one.
Sorry, would you mind just reading that question again? Apologies.
Yeah, sure. Where do I find out more about connecting to the UK customs for Freeport automatic filings?
Yeah, so it is. I think with regard to that is that the customs policy around Freeports, that there has been an announcement on what the UK customs policy is going to be, but my understanding is that there could be further iterations of that as to how it's actually going to operate. But I think, as Nick said, that there is an application that you can make for further details. So the best thing to do is speak to your Freeport first to actually understand the nature of your business, then make the application, and then from there you'll receive further information. Thank you.
And one thing that we sort of talked about prior to the webinar was the authorized economic operator status. And I know that maybe not all the answers are available around this, but a question here is, does AEO status have to be satisfied on all sites, regardless of operations? We have 20 sites in the UK and another 33 around the world. Huge undertaking, but we're already AEO, just not AEOS.
Yeah, so happy to take that question. So clearly in that instance, an AEOC for custom simplification. I think again, when looking at this, it's looking the status, if you like, of AEO in relation to Freeports is clearly again a potentially evolving policy area, and businesses is probably more looking at the benefits of authorised economic operator as a whole. So yes, in terms of customs simplification, and happy to answer questions on that, there are benefits there, but AEOS, I guess the benefits bring out other things around safety and security in the supply chain. So the benefits of AEOS could be if you're under pressure as part of a supply chain to have that AEOS recognition, but also it's there are mutual recognition agreements with regard to AEO that the UK has, and some countries, I guess, like the United States, probably abide by those mutual recognition agreements. But in a lot of the UK trade deals, again now, AEO is becoming quite important, and the development of trusted trader ecosystem of trust could be predicated around AEO. So I think with AEO, it is a question with regard to Freeports and what the interpretation is, both for the Freeport operator, and that very much will be down to them, but also in terms of the wider policy and benefits of AEO, which again come back to things like mutual recognition agreements under AEOS, and the importance of being part of international supply chains as well. So I think it's, when we look at AEO, we have to look at it both in the context of the Freeport, which is evolving, but also in the context of the benefits of AEOS. And I appreciate achieving AEOS can be quite time consuming. Thank you.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And Sam, if we can perhaps just move on with the slides now, because I'd just like to mention around the tax sites themselves, and what benefits people may get from actually being in a tax site. What I put up on the screen here is an HMRC image that sort of illustrates how a Freeport may be drawn. So this is a Freeport based around the sea. You can see the boundary there with the dotted black line, and within that you can see that there are these separate zones. So there are these custom zones that Sean was talking about, these custom sites where you'll get those benefits. And there's also separate, or it could actually be the same. You can see their C, you know, the customs zone and the tax site is the same site. So it's not the whole Freeport that's getting the customs and the tax benefits. It's designated areas within that. And I know if you look at, say, Thames Freeport, you can see exactly where their tax sites are within the actual Freeport, and Plymouth was another one I looked at, and you can see where they're intending to have the tax sites and the customs sites. So there's specific tax sites which are coming into these Freeports. And if you sort of look at the benefits here, and Sam, you might just be able to move the slide on here. The tax sites across the entire Freeport can't exceed a certain size, 600 hectares, but that could be made up with just one single site or up to 3 separate sites. And what are you really getting through being in that tax site itself? Well, the incentives sort of flow based on sort of what will take place. It's likely that a business will come into the tax site. It will need to acquire some land. So you've got some relief there from the stamp duty land tax. Then there's relief on the construction of buildings that may go onto that site with the structural and buildings allowances. Then you're thinking about, well, how are you going to operate in there? So there's plant and machinery allowances, there's enhanced capital allowances for the plant and machinery you actually use within the site. Then you've got relief for employing people and the employer's national insurance contribution reductions, and also potentially business rates reductions as well. So you can see that the government actually has to designate where these tax sites are. And as mentioned, Thames, we know where they are. Also in the Teesside and the Humber Freeports, there are these specific zones which have been identified. just looking at each one of those separate areas, just thinking about how these reliefs actually work. So it can be full or partial relief from stamp duty land tax when you acquire the land or you lease the land in the tax site. The key thing here is that the land and buildings must be used in a qualifying way, and that can't be for residential. You've got to get a claim in within 14 days of the transaction, and then there's this control period over 3 years in which you have to be able to demonstrate that you have used that building for a qualifying purpose. That relief, like a lot of these reliefs, actually, you'll see they actually have a end date set for the 30th of September 2026. So relief from SDLT up front, then these enhanced capital allowances. What's that giving you? Well, on the plant and machinery, 100% relief for a qualifying plant and machinery that you may be putting into the building or using for your trading activity within that tax site. Interestingly, this is only for companies, actually. So, you know, it's quite sort of specific there. Some of these reliefs may be prorated if plant and machinery is used in and outside of the tax site. And again, whenever there's tax incentives, there's always rules around how that may be withdrawn if somebody isn't actually using the relief or benefiting from it in the right way. So therefore, you have to be quite careful with these reliefs. Structures and building allowances, as we said, for any buildings going up, 10% relief per annum, so significantly enhanced from the SBA relief that is available from outside a tax site, which is, you know, set at 3%. Interestingly, on the national insurance, you're looking at people who are working in the site for more than 60% of their time. It can be zero employers national insurance. That's coming in from this April, and that's for employees on the earnings up to 25,000 per employee for the first 36 months. And then finally, the business relief. So it's quite specific to the actual site and the local authority, but you know, potential advantages there for business rates relief. So I think quite a lot of benefits from going into a tax site and setting yourself up there. As mentioned, it is a specific site within the Freeport itself, and not the entire area, which is boundaried as being a Freeport. So what we've really covered across this session so far are the Freeports that are coming on stream, the reasons for the UK introducing them, what the customs and tax benefits are. So now we're just going to pick up on some of the sort of questions that I think people have been asking around this from a sort of a practical point of view, just to try and draw a picture of what these Freeports may look like and how people may sort of apply to come within them. So Kevin, maybe firstly for you, just a sort of perhaps a feel of what a Freeport will look like. Are we expecting these to be fenced off areas with restricted access? What's your feeling as to how somebody will set up one of these Freeports itself?
Yeah, again, it's a good question, and I think when we think of Freeports, and sometimes we might think of Freeports in other parts of the world, the general area is that they have security around them, and they are closed entry sites. And I think, yeah, there are reasons for that. One is that you can clearly see that it's a Freeport, so people don't enter it by mistake, so to speak. But also the nature of the goods and the nature of activity in the Freeport itself. So if it's manufacturing, production, processing, warehouse, there will be some valuable goods. So clearly, both the security for the organisation in the Freeport, but the Freeport itself has to be very tight so that people can't easily wander in, so to speak. So certainly it will need those elements of it. As to what they'll actually physically look like, that remains to be seen. And again, I'm sure the Freeport operators will have their view, but we must think about the nature of the goods, the nature of processing and warehousing that takes place. By definition, that needs to take place in a secure environment.
Yeah, got you. And there's actually been quite a few questions around this sort of particular point around how do free ports interact with free trade agreements. And this is actually something that perhaps needs to be sort of thought about by the particular business themselves in terms of what they're doing, where their sort of goods are being exported to, what Freeport benefits they're looking to get, and the actual terms of the free trade agreement, because a lot of free trade agreements obviously have got rules of origin provisions in them, and they're only going to give the tariff benefits in the other country if those terms have been specifically provided for. So perhaps bringing the goods into a free port where they're not actually entering the UK may not allow somebody to actually benefit from the free trade agreement, which is drawn up if you're exporting those goods into a particular country. So this is really specific about the goods, the Freeport benefits you're looking to get, the free trade agreement that you're looking to take advantage of, and needs to be thought about quite carefully in terms of the supply chain and the business modeling there. Kevin or Sean, I don't know if you've got any further sort of comments around that, but that's my take on how these sort of free ports are interacting with the sort of wider sort of free trade agreements that the UK is entering into at the moment.
Yeah, again, it's a really good question, and it raises a number of interesting considerations. First of all, when free trade agreements are negotiated, increasingly the UK is negotiating more trade facilitation clauses, and it's notable in a lot of recent there. So what it is doing there is paving the way for potential trade and customs facilitations, and equally some will have mutual recognition agreements for authorised economic operator, for example. So so increasingly, if you like, the platform is being laid through the free trade agreement for customs and trade facilitations. The argument is that's not just free ports, that's for everything. So it links in very well to this point around trade corridors. So to give an example, the UK and Singapore have signed an MOU, a memorandum of understanding around trade digitalisation. Obviously, what that looks like in practice needs to be worked out. So it needs some form of agreement there, whether it's in the trade agreement or it's a separate MOU, and that will need to be worked through. With regard to trade corridors, so if an opportunity, for example, is seen from a free port in the UK to connect through a trade corridor to a free port in the United States or other countries, let's say the Middle East, for example, then there would need to be some agreement, obviously, between the free ports, but there might need to be some form of policy and agreement between the governmental levels as well. And whether that's within the FTA or an addendum to the FTA. The classical rules of world trade with regard to rules of origin and what you declare and things like that, the general principles is that they will still apply to activity there. So rules of origin will still need to be met as defined in a trade agreement or non-preferential origin, as the case may be. So generally those rules will apply, and just because it's in a free port doesn't mean that those rules do not apply. I think also we have to be cognizant that if we change the rules too much, that we are a member of the WTO, and other members of the WTO will obviously could become concerned if we're changing the rules just for free ports. But I hope that's answered the question there in terms of what can and possibly can't apply.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Couple for you, Sean. We're trying to get through a lot of questions actually. Here we've got sort of 10 minutes or so to run. One of the slides, it's perhaps one I put up, shows custom sites and custom zones. What is the difference between them, or are they the same thing?
I think they're the same thing. Custom sites, custom zones. I think it's just the terminology there being used.
Yeah, that would have been my take on it as well. And another one here is unrestricted movement also applicable outside customs sites, but within Freeport boundaries?
As in what Kevin alluded to with movement of the goods around the Freeport itself. Yeah, I'm not sure on that one, Kevin. That's the
yeah, again, it's an interesting question. It clearly does depend on the actual number of customs sites within the Freeport itself. So if you, for example, are moving goods, you have production in one customs site in a locality, then another customs site 10 miles further up the coast, for example, then that is a good example of how goods could move unrestricted, where you're moving from one customs site to another. I think the argument is, and clearly legislation has to work out fully and policy has to work out fully. But if you're moving it, for example, from a customs site, so let's say the goods come in from abroad, and you have your raw materials as part of this. So you receive your raw materials, you take some semi-processing, and then you move goods to someone else in the supply chain who produces the finished product. Then it is best in theory and probably in practice to move those goods to another customs site where that final producer of the goods is based. So that's the general principle there, is that if you're talking about that component part element there, then it's best to move from one customs site to another customs site, not out of the customs site, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. And Sean, it says Freeports appear to be designed for businesses that import and re-export goods. I guess that's the case. That's a real benefit if your business is doing that.
I suppose you're overriding, yeah, and also the processing in between. I think that's one of the key things of a Freeport is the processing and what you can do within the Freeport in terms of adding value to the goods and then moving them on again. I think that's a key thing. Yeah, if it goes back into the UK domestic market, then potentially ordinary tariffs may well apply.
Yeah. And Kevin, this is a very practical question. I mean, how does somebody actually, if they're interested in a Freeport, how do they apply, and what information do we know they're going to need when they sort of make that application?
Yeah, so again, the best thing there is obviously consider your locality, which Freeport you're considering, and contact a Freeport operator. But a type of information would obviously be details about your business, and your records. And if you have good records, for example, you've had a customs audit, a good customs trade compliance, do mention that. Give details about the nature of your business, the nature of trade that you will be undertaking within the Freeport itself. So, for example, where are you expecting goods from? Where are you expecting goods to go? What is the supply chain going to look like? But also think about the other benefits of Freeport. So R&D, will you be investing in R&D? What type of innovation? Will you be looking to protect your intellectual property there? So bring out as much information you can. I appreciate putting information down is quite detailed, but the more information you can give to the Freeport operator, the clearer picture they can get, and obviously hope to work with you and get involved. So the sharing of information, contacting the Freeport operator is very, very important. But I would focus also on things like innovation, R&D, intellectual property. So the Freeport operator can get a wider view of what your business is, what your intentions are. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and this question's been asked a couple of times actually, so I will just raise it, probably one again, sorry for you, Kevin. It says, what benefits will be available to the actual port berth owner in a Freeport?
Interesting question. Easy for me to say, contact your Freeport operator if you are there. I think again that is a subject for discussion, and it's very much for discussion with you and the Freeport owner initially. Obviously difficult to know where that question is coming from in terms of whether you are an existing berth operator or you're thinking of investing. I guess if you're thinking of investing as a berth operator, then please contact the Freeport. If you're an existing berth operator, I guess if you're not in the Freeport and you want to get into the Freeport, that is a different conversation. So it depends on the motive. But if you're thinking about, if you like, you're investing, it's fair to say another great benefit of Freeports is the investment side of things as well, the regeneration side. So please contact your Freeport.
Yeah, thanks for another one, maybe for you actually, Sean. I don't know this one, quite specific. Is a T1 still required for bonded goods entering a Freeport?
Yeah, good question. I would imagine yes, probably until it gets there. Once it's inside, I guess it then comes under the remit of the Freeport special procedure itself, or any other authorization that is in existence. But I guess to get it in there, you would have to do that.
Okay. Kevin, I don't know if you have any comments.
Yeah, I think to add to that, like a lot of things, we had that sort of quick discussion on rules of origin, is that the rules of international trade still apply. So if we think about the actual requirement for a T1, that requirement doesn't change. So the answer is yes. Okay, great. Now, I think we've just got a couple of minutes to go. And Sam, I know we had a poll question. Given the amount of information we've been through on Freeports here, I think we were just really looking to see whether you feel your business would be interested in setting up in a Freeport. Lots of things that we've talked about, benefits perhaps of being in there, these different economic zones around the country. So just a simple yes, no answer, just to get a feel for, is this initiative actually resonating with people? There you go, 50-50. Well, hopefully through this session anyway, we've been able to make you aware of how Freeports are going to operate around the UK, some of the benefits, some of the big changes that are going to be happening to the economy here in these particular areas. Exciting for the UK, and we'll obviously watch carefully as these different Freeports start to come on stream over the coming years. So with that, we're just on 3 o'clock. A huge thank you to Sean and Kevin for some really insightful answers to the questions. Thank you everybody out there for asking those questions. I hope we've covered the issues that you are wanting to hear about. But if you want to do any follow-up, we'll be sending out an email after this with all of our contact details, and please do get in touch. So for myself, Sean, Kevin, thank you very much for joining us, and have a good afternoon.